In this podcast, I sat down with Juan Cerda of SLR. SLR is a consulting group that does acoustical consulting for architects and for customers. Juan is one of their engineers, and so he's had tremendous experience over multiple decades of handling acoustical issues in all sorts of common and not so common applications. I sat down with him and we got to discuss our favorite topics, acoustical challenges, and he got to give us some insights from an acoustical consultant's perspective about how best to solve different challenges that he ran into. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you will too. Let's jump in. Well, thanks for being here, Juan.
Thank you.
You're, just so I get your name right, Juan Cerda? Did I say that correct?
Juan Cerda.
Oh, Cerda,
correct.
okay. So Juan, you're an acoustical consultant for SLR. I'm going to let you answer that.
Yes. I'm a senior acoustical consultant. Worked for SLR HFP for 25 years.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's been a while.
Very experienced.
Yes.
You've kind of seen it all, right?
Seen a lot.
Seen a lot. There we go. So you got into acoustics. You're a young man, so 25 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
Tell me about kind of how it all started.
I guess out of school, I was working for a company, a civil engineering company that had an acoustics and vibration department, and I was hired to work on a vibration monitoring project, and I just kind of grew into the acoustics part, and have been doing it for 25 years now, plus 25 years.
So you went to school to do this?
No. My background was in engineering technology.
Okay.
So,
Excellent.
so-
So what does it take to start with a background there and then end up kind of in acoustics? Does it just take a job, an opportunity, or is there specific?
It's an opportunity. I mean, there are programs that are focused on acoustics, but the majority of the people that work here, its background is in engineering, physics, and we also have several people whose background is in music theory. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're audiophiles when it comes
Exactly.
to music, and then
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
just the natural
Yeah.
outgrowth of that. Kind of like most AV guys I know.
Yeah.
You know, they're not overly technical. They just love music and audio,
Yes.
and then they kind of
Yes.
end up selling all the equipment that goes with it. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so so you've been doing this for 25 years. So give us a rundown of kind of what your organization is probably a lot broader than you. As far I'm sure there's specialists outside of what you do, but based on what you do, what are some of the common areas and things that you end up working on?
Okay. Yeah. As a company, SLR does a lot of other things other than acoustics.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, most of the people in this office work in acoustics and noise control. And within that group, we have people that kind of focus either on architectural acoustics or industrial.
And so
Noise
what would the difference be in industrial being too loud?
Noise control.
OSHA requirements.
Yeah,
And if it's
yeah,
too loud, you have to wear ear protection and things like that.
And compliance issues
Sure.
also. If oil and gas company is changing or building a new facility, and there are ramifications that are that have noise aspects to it, compliance and things like that. Plus. Being good neighbors and
Sure.
noise exposure
Sure.
to their employees. So,
So you've got your employees that can't be exposed to too much sound for too long,
exactly.
and
yeah.
then someone down the street or behind the
Exactly.
fence
Yes.
might not appreciate too much
Yes,
too
yeah.
much loud noise.
Yeah, plus compliance.
Sure.
Compliance with federal and or local ordinances and
Okay.
regulations.
And then architectural is more of the what we would think of acoustics, building spaces and making sure that there's privacy or acoustic comfort, or that the AV components work properly in a space and things like that? Is that kind of
that's
how you describe that?
that's the architectural
Okay.
part of it, and yes, we look at acoustic separation, acoustic quality, speech privacy, just anything that has to do with with sound and or noise, mechanical noise.
Sure.
Anything that has to do with noise and sound.
What would you say are some of the most frequent issues that you end up seeing? Because I'm sure you see kind of a common theme, it probably seems, in a lot of architectural spaces. What are some of the most common kind of issues that you experience?
It just depends on the room use, like conference rooms and things like that. People are concerned with acoustic quality within the room, and then also isolation from if you're in a conference room, you want to make sure that it's separated from your reception and any other adjacency, but you're also concerned with the acoustics within the room.
Sure.
You want the room to function like a conference room should function.
And not to be overly simplistic there, but like that's what I do, is make things simple, right? So I take
Sure.
I take that complex stuff that you handle and try and boil it down for people. So from what I understand, what you're saying is, when you're talking about in a conference room, the people on the conference line or the video conference want good quality sound and video, so that way that communication's clear. Because nothing's worse than this really echoey large conference room and being on the other end of the phone, barely able to hear people and things like that. So that's what you're talking about in the space.
Yes,
And then separating it.
the acoustic quality
Exactly.
of the space.
And then separating that conversation from a privacy standpoint of like people sitting in the lobby should not be able to overhear a conversation happening in that conference room.
Yeah, and exactly, and to solve that, we got to look at the doors and the walls,
Exactly.
and at the background sound level also.
And those are often different solutions, because we get people that call us and say, well, can I just put some panels up against the wall and that will stop the transmission of sound, and we have to explain that, well,
Correct,
that will
yeah.
that will help solve one problem, it's not going to solve the other problem.
Yes,
So-
you have to look at separation, absorption, and background sound.
There you
So
go. Yep.
that's those are the three components that's going to determine how much privacy that conference room is going to have from
Sure.
adjacent areas.
Yeah. What other issues do you see? So I'm sure that's probably one of the biggest ones we experience.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Are there other issues?
Yeah, there are mechanical noise. Inevitably, the architect will put mechanical equipment in above a conference room, and
Sure.
it's at that point that conference room, the use of that conference room is going to be very limited, because it's going to, if you have a loud VAV box or something in the plenum, it's totally going to compromise the function
Sure.
of that room.
Well, it's our mission to go around. I did a CEU yesterday at an architect firm. I do this all the time, and I always have them raise their hand if they've ever heard of ABC, absorb, block, and cover of sound, and kind of how much knowledge do they have. And most of the time, nobody raises their hand, or very few people raise their hand. Of course, you're like, yep.
Yeah.
But that's our mission, is how can we go out there and communicate to them so that things like that are considered in that initial design. So to me, the more often that an architect or designer can consider some of those things, the fewer issues we're going to have to solve after people move in, which is often when everybody's a little bit less happy about what's going on.
Yeah. And that's what we do. We review we can review the architect's plans, and then not just look at the conference room, look at the whole space, the conference rooms, reception, office to office, open office areas, and we'll give them a narrative that spells out the things that they need to look at. Like in a conference room, we'll give them the NC level that the conference room should be. Based on the room size, on the volume of the room, the reverberation time that would be appropriate for the space, and then also separation. Your walls should be STC 55. Your door
Sure.
should be an STC 35 or 40. And if you do these things, you'll get these results.
So you kind of build out the specification for them so that they know if this is built to this specification, we can expect these results.
Yes, and a lot of larger companies have their own guidelines
Sure.
for everything, including acoustics, and we can take those, review them, and make sure that what the architect is designing is going to meet their guidelines.
Perfect. Okay, so
It's
you're
gonna
kind of
meet
a
their
specialist that makes sure that the guidelines are followed
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
results end
yeah.
up as
And,
they should be.
Most companies don't have their own guidelines,
Right,
so
yeah.
we apply known guidelines
Sure.
that we recommend.
What are some, in your experience, what are some of the best solutions that you've that solve some of these problems? I mean, you've mentioned some of them. Anything that you think is kind of a go-to thing that solves acoustic issues?
There's not one go-to thing.
I mean, you can list all of our products if you'd like, but
those are definitely products that are in our design
Sure.
toolbox.
Yeah.
So you can only get so much speech privacy, even if you build a really great wall. If the background sound is really low, the speech privacy is not going to be as good as with the controlled recommended background sound.
so if you've got a very quiet space, it doesn't matter how good that wall is, that sound is going to leak through somewhere and you're going to be able to overhear conversations.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then sound masking raises that, makes it
Yes.
almost, in my experience, we'll come into places where they didn't build the wall right,
Right.
and sound masking can significantly help. It doesn't always fix the problem, but it can certainly help.
Yeah. I mean, it will almost always help, but yeah. I mean, it's dependent on what your goals are. You may need to build a wall
Sure.
that goes to deck with insulation in it, and
It
But-
seems like one of the things I'm seeing a lot is where people come in at a tenant improvement. The building's already there, and they're just kind of splitting up a suite, and they end up putting a wall right where there's a exterior window.
okay.
And it stops at that window, and they have no good way. I mean, they'll put rubber sealers or something to try and stop the sound. But it's funny, they'll put a whole wall up, and then an inch gap between the wall and the glass window. And you might as well not have put a wall. You might as well put a window right in the middle so they can talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, that gap might be only quarter inch, half an inch, but if it runs the length of
Yep.
it's all cumulative. So it could be like putting in a square foot window. So
Yeah. So that's definitely one of the things we see a lot of.
yeah, and that's one of the things that we look for and try to tell our clients that you have to make sure you have a good airtight seal at
Sure.
this condition.
Sure. Yeah. So are you often seeing, what we're seeing in the office space design, especially you work with architects more than I do even, a lot of times they're starting to not put ceiling tiles in more and more, where they're going with more of that exposed ceiling look, industrial look, if you will, in the space. From an acoustical consultant's standpoint, what are some of the concerns you have when you see that?
Acoustic quality and acoustic quality, speech privacy. Yeah, we have we see
We're
see
seeing it a lot,
those
yeah.
more and more,
Mhm.
and they still have we still have to get sound absorption in there somehow, and they're instead of getting it from a ceiling tile, they can do treatments like spray on deck or
Sure.
put panels, like one of your products on
yeah.
the
Somewhere up there.
on the structure.
Yeah.
Because you still have to control sound buildup in those spaces.
So we get asked this a lot, and I'd love to hear it from you. People who have that space, they've got workstations in an exposed ceiling environment. What is probably the number one thing they could do first? Because, they'll ask us, should we do sound masking or should we do a baffle system or something like that? We do recommend both. I look at that space just like what you just said, and both is going to be the maximum benefit.
Exactly.
But is there a order of importance in your opinion?
It's like 50-50.
Okay.
I mean, it's you need both. You need both, and I would have to look at the specific application.
Of course, you're an engineer, so you can't.
To make that decision.
Yeah.
But you need both, and I don't know. It's project A, they can only do one. We may recommend sound masking over. If
Sure.
they can only do one.
If they could only afford one, it might be
Yeah.
sound masking.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there may be other things that come into play that they would be better off
Sure. Yeah.
with improving the acoustic quality.
The way I typically describe it to people, tell me if I'm completely wrong, because sometimes I am completely wrong, is I like to tell them what we're going to try and do in this space is use acoustical absorption to remove some of the reverberation and we'll say quiet the space down, because when there is no ceiling, it can be very active in there. Sound reverberation can be very lively.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and remove that and lower the noise level, and then we're going to introduce sound masking to create a predictable background level. And so you really do need both, because if you don't have the absorption, the sound masking ends up having to be very loud in order for it to kind of be effective. And so that can be detrimental, distracting, and not quite where you want it as a system.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
That
I'll take pretty accurate. That's pretty. That's close.
No, yeah, that was
That's close.
What happens when you don't have absorption is the sound builds up in the room, and it can be it can cause fatigue. It can be distracting. It's not good for speech privacy. So but sound masking would help that, because it would raise the background level to periods of time. It could be very quiet, and if there's a lot of activity in the room, that's when sound builds up. So with sound masking, you just control it from going, from 30 to 55. When you introduce sound masking, then it's only going from 45, 46 to 55. So there's a smaller window of
right. So and that's
a smaller fluctuation.
Absolutely. That's the way I try and describe it to people is if we can control a consistent volume in here, it might get louder than that, but when the variance is less, it's less noticeable, right?
Yes.
It's less, anytime you go from a completely silent space to a noisy space, the contrast is what's so noticeable and distracting. So, excellent. Well, that's I'm glad I'm saying it mostly right.
I think you're saying it right. It was your explanation was very thorough.
Okay, excellent. Appreciate that. How knowledgeable would you say the general public is on acoustics? You work with architects, you work with end users.
In general, I would say not as knowledgeable
as maybe you'd like them to be.
As I would like them to be. Yeah, because the way I kind of think about it is that, people don't really think about acoustics or noise unless they have a problem with acoustics or noise. So, if most of the time, people don't have a very in-depth knowledge of how acoustics and noise works.
And so, kind of back to the architects and designers, I mean, we do a lot of lunch and learns and CEUs and trainings to try and dealers as well, people specifying furniture or AV or selling those solutions to clients. Our company looks like if we can help people make this a simple conversation to educate people, at least on the basics. So like you said, so they're thinking about it on the front end. They might not know the ins and outs of every solution or what products are going to solve the right problems, but at least it's on their mind. That kind of helps everybody. That helps everybody in the process do their job better, because there's, what you'd hate to have is at the very end, no one ever brought this up to them.
Yes.
And people are not educated about it. Yeah. So they think they're going to get one thing. They move in after they spent just tons of money to do it. And they're extremely unhappy with the result because no one had a conversation with them about acoustical challenges they might be facing.
Yeah, and we do some of those type of seminars and lunch and learns for our clients, and we kind of give them a list of things that they should look out for. And obviously you can't cover everything, but we give them demos and examples of I guess what could go wrong if you don't address acoustics and noise.
And what I always tell architects especially, because I'm like, you guys are always the one that the client looks to as the expert for almost everything, it seems. They're supposed to know everything, and of course they can't. So, but what you don't want to have happen is you didn't bring anything up, and then they have a problem. So, because if you bring it up and they say, you know what, we're not going to do that right now, for whatever budgetary reasons are usually what determine what gets done and what does not get done. So if they determine they can't do these things because they're too expensive, at least in the end, if they have a problem, they're not upset that no one told them that this could be a problem. They're like, oh, you were right. Now we might need to find the money.
Yeah, you are. That's very accurate. That even when we work on a project and we give them a long list of recommendations, it's they don't always get executed, but just like you said, it manages our expectations of what they're going to get, and at the end of the project, they can say, well, why wasn't this brought up? So, if they make the decision, I guess it seems a little less
absolutely
painful.
Well, I made the mistake. I may have told the story before, but I made the mistake early in my career years ago where I really wanted to make a sale on this particular project. And I knew that my portion was only part of the solution. I was trying to push sound masking, and I knew that sound masking was what they needed, but they had other problems. They had echo issues and things like that. And of course, I'm a young salesperson really wanting to hit my number, and so I ignored the fact that even though I knew they needed other things, I didn't tell them. And so, of course, it ended with, your stuff doesn't work. They were unhappy with the solution because it was only part of the solution. And so I only made that mistake once, because then I learned, if I can go in more with a consultative approach and just say, look, even if I don't do it, but here's what I do, but you're going to want to look at this entire thing. I had situations like that, and they would typically come back and say, hey, do you have anybody you would recommend? Because you were right. We need these other products as well. And that allowed me, I've referred people to you for different things, and other partners that we've had. But I just learned for myself, I'd much rather have that conversation than have the other one. Where they're unhappy with our solution.
And, that probably happens in every industry.
Of course.
That not one thing is the answer to everything. And that's kind of what we do for architects. We give them a picture of everything they should look out for.
Sure. And something you told me a while back, I'd love to revisit this on the record, right? When you add multiple acoustical solutions together, like acoustic panels or a good STC rated wall and sound masking, when you add those together, they end up, the net improvement or benefit ends up being larger than each individual item by itself.
Of course, yeah, and a lot of times it's balancing. It's that if they have speech privacy goals and they don't want to do sound masking for whatever reason, but they'll have to build like this really high STC rated wall, and if they could build a wall with a partition with a lower STC rating and have sound masking and accomplish the same rating.
Sure, yeah.
So, we kind of balance those things.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. A balance, which helps. I mean, most customers understand that too. So you can talk about the different options that they have available to them, because most people are not trying to build a cinder block wall with
right.
air gaps between the two walls and all
right.
that. They're looking for a kind of cheaper, faster solution, and so being able to balance the different ways to accomplish that is helpful.
And establishing goals for the project is something that's very important.
Absolutely, because when you establish goals, you establish expectations as well.
Yeah,
which, I mean, I'm sure that's what you guys find is setting expectations when it comes to acoustics is probably the most important thing you can do from your perspective, from my perspective. I mean, that's what I see is if I can understand what they're trying to achieve and then I can set the expectations about what's possible,
yes, yeah,
then we know if we've actually reached our goal or not.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what we recommend. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of larger companies have guidelines with goals in there.
Sure.
And most people don't. And in those cases, there are standards and that we can use to establish goals for the project.
Absolutely. And probably, and this last technical conversation we'll have here is we get asked all the time about cancellation, and can that be utilized in a space? How do we do that? And I'm pretty sure we're not there yet. We're not even close when it comes to an open space to cancel sound. Obviously, we still look to sound masking, but what are you seeing and hearing out there?
We get asked about noise cancellation all the time, and what they're asking about is active noise cancellation, which is a technology that exists and it works, but the application's got to be correct. It works on headphones, where the receiver is wearing the active noise product.
It's a predictable distance. You have one ear, and it's only a half an inch away, and it's kind of easy to scientifically then do that cancellation.
And I think it's worked well. Some car makers have integrated that into some of their cars, and so it does exist and it does work, but the application's got to be correct. It's not going to cancel noise in an open office environment, because to cancel noise you need a lot of microphones, you need a lot of speakers, and it just would not be practical in an open office.
We get the CEO that says, "I want to cancel everything I say so that when no one out there can hear what I'm saying," and I'm like, "Oh, well, it's not possible." What we can do is build you a better wall, and we
Yep.
can add sound masking, so that way we can cover over what you're saying.
Yeah.
And to different levels, we can solve that problem for you. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation that we have, because a lot of people use the term cancel. They'll even say, we'll do a sound masking job for someone, and then they'll expand to another location, and they'll say, I'd like to add another noise canceling system at this location, and you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah, we get that question all the time, and we get asked about noise canceling, and then we also get that people think that sound masking is sound canceling, and it's not. It's two different things.
It is, and so sometimes I just kind of go with it, because it's not worth.
Right.
And
Right.
then when I have opportunities to educate people, I try to, just because
Yes.
you don't want those two terms to become synonymous, because that confuses people on what is actually happening, how these solutions actually work.
Yes.
So what do you like to do in your spare time?
In my spare time, not work.
Yeah, right. You don't do acoustics in your spare time?
No, I don't. I guess I enjoy playing golf. I would like to say that I like to stay active, but the older you get, the more difficult that is.
Sure.
Enjoy doing things with my family, and going to kids' sporting events. Like to travel. Like to eat. So
All the things that
all
that
the
make life
things.
worth living, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question: if you had all the money in the world, and this might go along with what you already said you like to do, because
Yeah.
a lot of us are doing what we would normally do. But if you didn't have to work and you had all the money in the world, what is there anything outside of what you currently do that you would love to do?
Well, yeah, I think I would definitely take more exotic vacations. Go to a lot more sporting events. It's that's another thing that I enjoy. I like going to go Astros games, Rockets games, and things like that.
I'm not going to make a joke about the Astros right now. It's just not. It's not the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
I also like.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I guess I would buy a lot more cars too.
There you go. Me too.
So,
which then means you have to build more garages.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My son's in love with cars. He's 5.
Okay.
And so I've already showed him a couple different classic cars that when he gets old enough, we're gonna work on. So he's got like his top 3 that as a 5-year-old. He's
Okay.
already kind of picked out that we're going to work on those cars when we get older. So
Yeah.
I've already got my eye open for like a good opportunity to buy one, because I'm like, he's going to be old enough before we know it.
Yeah, I think if I had all the money in the world, that's one thing that I would definitely do more of. It's things with classic cars, new cars, high performance, just cars of all kinds, trucks.
Well, I've got a boy that's pushing me that direction, so
Yeah.
that's probably
So-
something I'm going to be into.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you having us over in
no
your
problem.
space.
My pleasure.
And explaining some complex topics for us, because the world needs to know more about this stuff as we continue building space that causes all these issues that keep you and I gainfully employed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks a lot, Juan.
Thank you.
All right.